Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Jeff Smith here in the Eyewitness News Weather Center with a look at the tropics. And of course, Dorian is the big ticket item approaching Puerto Rico during the day tomorrow. The good news is it doesn't look very healthy on the satellite picture. It's really having a tough time intensifying. And this is all good news for Puerto Rico because it is going to make a direct hit on the island tomorrow. And we don't need this to be a really strong storm, especially considering what they went through a couple of years ago. 50-mile-per-hour winds right now. It's moving west-northwest at 13 miles per hour. The pressure is at 1,005 millibars. So it's a pretty weak storm. It looks pretty ragged on the satellite picture. It's encountering a lot of dry mid-level air that's kind of being drawn into the center of the storm, and that's stopping any type of rapid intensification, which again is good news. 300 miles southeast of Ponce, Puerto Rico right now, and again moving off that west-northwesterly path. It'll be probably on Puerto Rico at some point later on tomorrow afternoon, early tomorrow evening, before exiting the island later on tomorrow night and moving away. And all the while we've been talking about how if it moved over Hispaniola, if it moved over the Dominican Republic, it was going to really weaken rapidly and really be not much of anything after it emerged off the coast there and headed into the Bahamas, and a U.S. impact over the mainland would be less likely. We're now obviously trending more toward that less weakening path there, where it moves over part of Puerto Rico, the western part, but not as mountainous as the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico that is. So the storm would not weaken as much. It's going to weaken a little bit. It'll knock the wind out of the storm a little bit, but I think a U.S. mainland impact is more likely based on the track that we have right now. And let's track it for you. According to the National Hurricane Center official forecast, by 2 p.m. tomorrow, we're talking about 65-mile-per-hour sustained winds. If it sneaks up to hurricane status, it would be very minimal. It would maybe be a 75 or 80-mile-per-hour hurricane. But right now, we're not forecasting that to happen. But just in case that happens, the National Hurricane Center does have Puerto Rico under a hurricane watch in addition to the tropical storm warning. So the warning issued because we're very confident that Puerto Rico will experience tropical storm force winds tomorrow. And that's that yellow shading there around the center of the storm. Those are winds of 39 miles per hour or higher sustained. And then you head into that orange shading right near the center. That would be right near Ponce as it moves in inland there, probably around 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Those could be winds over 50 or 60 miles per hour, at least in gusts. And watch how quickly the storm moves. It's not like it sits around Puerto Rico for hours on end. By 2 o'clock Thursday morning, so very late tomorrow night, the tropical storm force winds are already offshore to the north and west of the island, and the storm is weakened down to 45 miles per hour by that point because, again, the mountains of Puerto Rico will probably take some of the wind out of the storm. When it gets over those open waters, though, north of Hispaniola and northeast of the Turks and Caicos, it starts to encounter some more favorable environmental conditions for intensification or re-intensification. And I think we're back up to 50 miles per hour by Thursday at 2 p.m., 65 miles per hour as it moves over very warm waters northeast of the Bahamas. In addition to the really warm waters, there's not going to be a whole lot of wind shear out there to rip the storm apart. So we're thinking that it will have pretty conducive development conditions for strengthening as it moves north of the Bahamas. And then by Saturday, it's probably just northeast of the Bahamas, 70-mile-per-hour winds. And there's a chance, I think there's a better chance that this approaches Florida as a hurricane. I mean, we have it right now officially as a tropical storm approaching the east coast of Florida by Sunday afternoon. I think it has a better chance of approaching Florida as a hurricane, though, than Puerto Rico as a hurricane tomorrow, because it's going to have that much more time to be sitting over those warm waters and potentially intensifying. So that cone of uncertainty by Sunday extends along the entire Florida coast. So, I mean, this could hit anywhere from the Keys all the way up to Jacksonville, even the Georgia coastline. As you get farther out in time, the average error tends to increase. Actually, by 5 days, the average error in a hurricane track forecast is about 200 miles. So you're talking at least 200 miles on either side of the official National Hurricane Center track where this could track. And that shaded area is the potential track area. So the Florida coastline could be in for it by later on in the weekend, at least as a strong tropical storm as it potentially makes landfall. In terms of the impacts across Puerto Rico tomorrow and tomorrow night, we're looking at 60 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts possible. Southwestern, extreme southwestern parts of Puerto Rico. We're talking Mayagüez all the way down to Ponce and then extending eastward onto the eastern tip of the Dominican Republic as well. Much of the rest of Puerto Rico, at least the southwestern half of Puerto Rico, 40 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts out there. And in addition to the wind, we're going to be dealing with some rainfall as well on the order of 3 to 6 inches and maybe even some localized amounts up to about 8 inches in some of the higher hills. So this hits Puerto Rico as a tropical storm tomorrow. Conditions will deteriorate across the island from southeast to northwest during the day tomorrow, probably peaking out late tomorrow afternoon, early tomorrow evening, before quickly letting up by later on tomorrow night. Again, the storm is booking along. Wind gusts possibly 60 miles per hour plus, maybe 3 to 6 inches of rain. And again, this may approach the U.S. mainland as we head over the weekend, particularly Florida, maybe up to about Georgia. But Florida is really looking like it's in the crosshairs of this later on in the weekend. The intensity forecast, very uncertain at this point, though. Another area of concern, not really too much concern, but it's an area of low pressure. It's a tropical depression actually southeast of Cape Hatteras, moving north-northwest at 7 miles per hour. This will accelerate off to the northeast, I think, during the next couple of days. It may briefly become a tropical storm. If it does that, it would be named Erin. And then it probably weakens to just a remnant low as it approaches the Canadian Maritimes by later on in the week. But all the while, it will be sending some waves in our direction here in the tri-state region. So there could be some rough surf and some strong rip currents right through tomorrow and into the day on Thursday as well. Looks like we have some questions coming in here.
We do, and I'll read them to you because
Sure.
I have chicken scratch handwriting. So there's a lot of people that are very concerned about Puerto Rico and Florida. Some people are wondering, will the Dominican Republic be impacted? And we had a viewer say cruise lines have adjusted their ports. Is that something we can expect, you would think, to kind of be on, do we need to be on the lookout for that?
Yeah, well, we definitely have heard that cruise lines have adjusted their itineraries, into and out of Puerto Rico based on the path of Dorian. And you can expect that as we head into the weekend as well. You might see cruise lines change their itineraries out of, say, Port Canaveral. That's a really big cruise line port. Port Canaveral, Florida, maybe even in and out of Miami. Airlines are going to be changing their schedules as well. But the main impact in Puerto Rico will be during the day tomorrow. The chance of Florida getting an impact is really as we head later on into the weekend, later Saturday into the day on Sunday. We're very confident of Puerto Rico getting a nasty day tomorrow. Again, tropical storm force winds out there, some heavy rain squalls moving on through places like San Juan, but especially south of San Juan, down toward the south coast of Puerto Rico. Get some of the worst conditions there. Not as confident as to exactly where this is going to end up, potentially along the Florida coast. I was showing you that cone of uncertainty earlier, and that extends basically from, again, Key West all the way up to Jacksonville. So the entire Florida coastline is up for grabs for maybe getting a landfalling tropical system by later on in the weekend. I'll show you that again. Here's that cone of uncertainty. That shaded region represents the potential track area of Dorian. And as you head, again, further out in time, that potential track area gets wider and wider. And that's just based on the inherent errors in our computer modeling.
And one other point to touch on, we have a lot of questions. Is there any chance we will feel this impact on the East Coast up here by New York? If so, when?
Somebody asking about if Dorian will be impacting the East Coast farther north. And right now, we're not thinking that would be the case. We'd have to see what would happen after it potentially hits Florida Sunday into Monday. But there are a lot of indications that the storm would kind of put on the brakes maybe over the southeast and then get caught up in the westerlies, and then it would make a curve back to the north and east and probably off the Carolinas. I don't see much support for the system actually coming all the way up the East Coast and giving us a tropical storm or a hurricane around here. We'll be watching it just in case, but right now it looks like Florida really in the crosshairs of this. So we'll get through Puerto Rico and the potential Florida landfall first, and then we'll take our worries further out in time to see if it's going to move up the East Coast or if it's just going to put on the brakes and move over the Appalachians and just kind of sit and spin for a while. So we're going to be getting a new update coming up at 11 o'clock from the National Hurricane Center. That will be the latest advisory, and we'll be sure to relay that information right here on Eyewitness News at 11 o'clock. And as always, you can get online, go to ABC7NY. You can download the news app on the Google Store, on the Apple Store and Google Play. And you can always follow me on social media at Jeff Smith ABC7 at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you have any more specific questions about Dorian and also about that tropical depression developing off of the East Coast. Until then, I'll see you on Eyewitness News at 11 o'clock tonight again with that new National Hurricane Center advisory coming up at 11 o'clock. Have a good night.